Hey, what's up YouTube? Bill Faulkner with Faulkner Custom Rods here to do another tutorial video by demand on how to properly measure and mix rod bonds. So thanks to those of you who submitted the request for this video. Happy to do it. Hopefully it's going to be helpful. Before we start, a little bit about rod bond because it's an interesting story. Way back in the 50s, Boeing was working on a government contract to build what would become the B-2 bomber, and they were having problems. They couldn't get the plane off the ground, riveting the wings due to the weight and drag, and so a young aerospace engineer named Ralph O'Quinn and his team went to work on the problem and came up with the concept of structurally bonding the wings rather than riveting them, and developed and formulated an epoxy or a bonding agent specifically to solve that problem. Had to be able to deal with minimal expansion and contraction across a great range of temperatures and altitudes, had to be shock proof for landing, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, the product that we know as Rod Bond today is essentially what that team developed, which ended up winning Ralph several accolades. And he since developed a number of excellent products for the sportsman and the rod builder: Aqua Seal, Snow Seal, Permagloss, Duragloss. But essentially the Rod Bond that we use today is the same adhesive that got the B-2 bomber off the ground. So pretty impressive pedigree for this adhesive. I was very fortunate as a young rod builder to meet Ralph. I had a lot to learn. We all do. I still do. But Ralph kind of took me under his wing and taught me literally everything I know about rod repair and most of what I know about epoxies and mixing and measuring and good techniques in the shop and good sort of way to manage these, adhesives that we use every day as part of rod building. So what I'm going to show you today is almost exactly and verbatim how Ralph O'Quinn taught me to use Rod Bond when he came and stayed with me a couple of times for some Nashville shows that Tom Kirkman had organized that predate the ICRBE. It was a great pleasure having Ralph stay with me. He taught me a lot and was a lot of fun. So I think he'd get a kick out of me passing it forward to you guys. So why do I love Rod Bond and why do I use it? Obviously, there are people who have challenges with it and are frustrated by it, or we wouldn't be having the demand for this video right now, and I get that. But it's absolutely worth working out because it's an exceptional product. So first of all, it is extremely strong. There is nothing that's going to get around poor surface prep or poor bonding, techniques and things like that. But compared to just about any other commercially available adhesive that we use in rod building, Rod Bond is strong. It is way stronger than we need it to be for rod building, and has some other qualities that I'll go into that also are advantageous. Because of the way it was developed to structurally bond and laminate wing materials on the B-2 bomber, it requires a very, very thin bond to achieve full strength. So I think it's something like 3 microns or 5 microns, way smaller than we're ever using. It's an aerospace grade tolerance. When Ralph used to bond cork rings with it, he would literally butter the surface of the cork rings with it and scrape all of the Rod Bond off he could get to come off. And it would look like the cork rings were dry, but he would clamp them then, and you had to break the cork to get them apart. The bond would not break. So it gives you an extremely thin bond and achieves full strength if you need it. It also is very temperature resistant. A lot of the epoxies get very brittle when they're cold, and they melt and fail when they get hot. Because of its original application at altitude and ascending and descending and all the stress and pressure that puts on an adhesive and a structurally bonded component, Rod Bond has like hundreds of degrees of range of tolerance, not only in where it will set, including underwater, but where it will not fail due to thermal fatigue, right? And so way more than we need for rod building, but it's kind of nice insurance to have. It's also flexible. It feels really hard when it sets, but it actually has some give and some flexibility, and that's deliberately for shock resistance. It can survive an impact like landing, or I don't know, like taking a Russian missile on the wing or something. I'm not sure what they were trying to accomplish originally with it, but it's very, very durable. And so if you ever wanted to know how temperature flexible and how shockproof it is, try to take a handle apart that you bonded with it. It's very hard to do. Most epoxies you can literally just heat and cool, and the thermal sort of fatigue will cause it to shatter and come loose, not Rod Bond. And again, to me, that's a very good thing. In addition to only requiring a very thin layer for full bond strength. It also is nice that because it's a paste, it stays where you put it, and it can be used for gap filling. Now again, this isn't a get out of jail free card for poor fit and finish and fitment of parts and everything else. But it's nice to have something you can fill gaps with if you need to. It's also very useful if you want to make a thread ramp or hosel out of epoxy at the front of a grip. If you want to, for example, I often will use it in the front of a gaff blank to create a ramp from the gaff hook up to the gaff ramp. If you let it set a little bit, wet your fingers or whatever you're going to be molding it with either isopropyl alcohol or photo flow, and you can literally shape it however you want, almost like clay, and it sets up very strong and is very useful in that capacity. So it also has very high lubricity, okay? And so if you have a build or an assembly where you really need to slide parts tightly into place, most often for rod builders, that's taken like an EVA or a Hypalon grip and trying to slide it into place on a blank that has a larger diameter than the inner diameter of the grip. The lubricity characteristics of Rod Bond are outstanding. And it also has extremely good wetting. And I talk to people about this, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense to folks. So I'll show you what I mean by wetting later in the video. But essentially what it means is when you put it on a surface, it fills all the pores, all the surfaces, and it sticks, right? And so once you put it in place, if you put a little on both parts that are going to be bonded and then put them together, you can rest assured you don't have any dry spots. You don't have any spots where you actually push the epoxy out of the joint. It's almost impossible to remove it. Like Ralph tried to remove all of it from the cork rings and still got a very strong bond. That's a big advantage to me. And the final thing is, and this is probably going to strike you as ironic if you wanted to see this video, because I assume maybe it's giving you problems, it's extremely forgiving of inexact measurement. The key is don't mix too small a batch. And if you miss on your mix, you want to make sure you miss with too much resin, not too much hardener. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video. But really, the primary changes from when they were bonding the B2 wings with Rod Bond to what we buy off the shelves now is that it's been made a little more tolerant of inexact mixing and made a little easier to mix in small batches. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through the materials that I use and what you'll need to properly measure and mix this stuff. And it's probably things you already have on hand. I'm going to show you the exact procedure Ralph taught me for how to mix it. We'll talk a little bit about applying it and the kind of things you need to watch out for, and then kind of summarize with a couple of tips at the end. So thanks for tuning in, and here we go. All right, so what I've done is laid out everything we're going to need to properly mix a batch of Rod Bond. I just thought I'd run through it for everybody for clarity's sake. Of course, we need Rod Bond. U40 makes a couple of products. They make this Rod Bond, the regular formula. They also make a quick bond, and it's pretty useful. I just usually stick with, if it's a bond that needs the strength of a paste type epoxy, I'm going to stick with the original Rod Bond. Threadmaster and others also have paste epoxies. I think paste epoxy has, clearly has great uses, but this was the original. In my opinion, this is still the best and still what I use. If you were going to knock Rod Bond, one of its greatest strengths is its wetting and how strong the bond is, but it also is a sticky mess, right? So we're going to have to make sure we have some things to clean up. So what I have here is a little bottle. I got this off of Amazon. I'm told that these are bottles that people use in nail salons, but it's kind of a push cap bottle where I can just take a little piece of paper towel, push it in, and it's now wetted with IPA. And I'm using 90% IPA, or 91%, I guess. This is just kind of a cheap bottle of rubbing alcohol. You can get it at Sam's, get it at Costco, get it at Walmart. I got these at Walgreens. Wherever it's convenient for you, you can get it. Excellent solvent. It's all you really need for cleaning up Rod Bond. In terms of mixing, this is probably the single most important thing. What I've got here is a piece of shiny cardboard, and I don't know what you call this. Somebody who's in the packaging industry can probably chime in the comments and tell us, but unlike regular cardboard that's sort of, matte and papery on one side, this is actually shiny on the other side. This particular one, I recently had to replace my stool here in the shop, and this is a the box that the adjustable shop stool, work stool came in. And so when I get a good box like this, I cut them into mixing pallets like this, about this size, as large or as small as you want. I have some smaller ones for 5-minute epoxy for tip tops, and I tend to use a larger one like this. I don't know, roughly the size of a piece of bread when I'm mixing Rod Bond. And then I also prefer to use and do a lot of work with spatulas. So this is a dental spatula that's used to mix, as nearly as I can tell, in a dentist's office, various mortars and glues and bonding agents. Generally, there's a bunch of different styles and types of these. In my experience, you want a C as in Charlie 24. Or I'm sorry, is it a C24 or a C4? I don't know if I can get this on camera. C24. I don't know if you can see that at all. But they're available all over the place. They're on Amazon, they're on eBay, you can get them through AliExpress, or you can go directly to a dental supply place. But they make two varieties, a really flexible one and a stiffer one. You definitely want the stiffer one. The flexible ones are useful, but if you're not careful, you can bend them and ruin them working to mix this stuff. So that's all the pieces that we need to mix the Rod Bond. So we'll go ahead and do a quick video of actually mixing it.